I am Meredith Calloway, 31 years old, and last Thanksgiving destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. After 12 months of saving every spare dollar, I surprised my parents with a check to help pay off their mortgage. My mother glanced at it, set it on the counter next to the cranberry sauce, and said, "That is sweet, honey, but we actually have some exciting news." Then she turned to my younger sister, Brooke, and handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a key. They had bought Brooke a townhouse, a fully furnished, 2-bedroom townhouse 6 blocks from their home. I stood in that kitchen holding a check that represented a year of sacrifice, and my mother did not even notice I was shaking. That night, I drove 400 miles without stopping. But before I tell you what I found at the end of that drive, let me tell you how I ended up in that kitchen in the first place. Growing up as the older daughter in the Calloway family meant learning early that love had conditions. Our house sat on a quiet street in suburban Columbus, Ohio, a red brick colonial with a wide porch and a mailbox shaped like a little barn. From the outside, we looked like every other family on Ridgewood Lane. My father, Glenn, worked as a regional sales manager for a medical supply company. My mother, Pamela, taught 2nd grade at the elementary school 3 blocks away. Respectable, comfortable, completely ordinary. The favoritism was anything but ordinary. Brooke arrived when I was 6 years old, and the axis of our household shifted permanently. I remember standing in the hospital hallway holding my grandmother's hand, watching through the glass as my parents hovered over the bassinet like she was the first baby ever born. My grandmother squeezed my fingers and whispered, "You are a big sister now, Meredith. That means you have to be brave." I took that instruction literally. I became so brave that no one ever thought to ask if I was okay. By 8, I was packing my own school lunches because my mother was too busy preparing organic purees for Brooke. By 10, I had memorized the bus schedule because my father could not drive me to swim practice while simultaneously taking Brooke to her toddler music class. These were small things individually. Collectively, they built a cage. My academic achievements were acknowledged the way you acknowledge a clock on the wall. Functional. Expected. Unremarkable. When I made honor roll in 6th grade, my father nodded and said, "Good girl." When Brooke drew a stick figure family portrait in preschool, they framed it and hung it above the fireplace where it remained for 11 years. The financial disparity started in high school. I wanted to attend a summer architecture program at Ohio State. The application fee was $200. My parents said it was too expensive and suggested I volunteer at the library instead. That same summer, they enrolled Brooke in a private gymnastics camp that cost $1,800 for 6 weeks. When I pointed out the difference, my mother said something I will never forget. "Brooke has real talent, sweetheart. We need to invest in that. You are smart enough to find your own opportunities." I did find my own opportunities. I found a part-time job at a sandwich shop at 15. I found scholarships by writing essays until my fingers cramped. I found a way to attend the University of Cincinnati on a partial academic scholarship and 3 different student loans. I found all of it alone. College was 4 years of splitting myself between classes and a 25-hour-a-week waitressing job at a diner near campus. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches so often that the smell of either still makes my stomach turn. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in interior design and $41,000 in debt. My parents attended the ceremony, arriving 20 minutes late because Brooke had a last-minute nail appointment for some friend's birthday party. They clapped politely when my name was called. Then my father checked his watch and asked if we could skip the reception because Brooke had a volleyball tournament the next morning and needed rest. I moved to Cincinnati proper after graduation, renting a studio apartment above a dry cleaner. The place smelled permanently of chemical lavender, and the radiator knocked all winter, but it was mine. I landed an entry-level position at a mid-sized design firm, starting at $38,000 a year. After taxes, loan payments, rent, and utilities, I had roughly $90 a week for food, gas, and everything else. I learned to budget the way some people learn to breathe. Automatically, unconsciously, because survival demanded it. Meanwhile, Brooke coasted through community college with mediocre grades, changed her major 3 times, and eventually dropped out entirely to pursue social media content creation. My parents funded this venture without hesitation, buying her camera equipment, lighting kits, and paying for online courses in video editing. When her account gained a modest following posting lifestyle content, they celebrated as though she had cured a disease. When I earned my first industry certification after 6 months of studying on my lunch breaks, my mother said, "That is nice. Did you see Brooke's new video? She got 10,000 views." The pattern was so consistent, it became almost predictable. Every family gathering followed the same script. I would arrive bearing thoughtful gifts I could barely afford. The conversation would orbit Brooke like she was the sun, and the rest of us were debris caught in her gravity. Someone would ask me when I was going to find a husband, as though my professional life was a waiting room for marriage. I would drive home replaying the evening, wondering what I had done wrong, wondering what I could do differently, wondering if there was some version of myself that would finally be enough. By 29, I had climbed to senior designer at my firm. I managed a small team, led client presentations, and had won a regional award for a restaurant renovation that tripled the owner's revenue. My student loan balance had dropped to $19,000. I had upgraded to a one-bedroom apartment with functioning heat and no chemical smell. These felt like victories. I wanted to share them with my family. I called home on a Tuesday evening to tell my parents about the award. My father answered, "Dad, I won the Heartland Design Award for that restaurant project I told you about. They are doing a feature in the local trade magazine." "Oh, that is great, Mur. Hey, listen, your mother and I were wondering if you could come home this weekend. Brooke needs help moving some furniture into her new studio space." He did not ask a single follow-up question about the award. I went home that weekend. I helped move furniture for 6 hours. Brooke's studio was a converted spare room in my parents' basement that they had renovated at a cost of roughly $12,000 according to the contractor's invoice I accidentally saw on the kitchen counter. $12,000 for a room where my sister filmed herself reviewing skincare products. My entire design education had cost them nothing. That evening, exhausted and dusty, I sat at the kitchen table while my mother made dinner. Brooke was upstairs editing. My father was watching football. "Mom," I said carefully, "do you and Dad ever think about how differently you have treated Brooke and me?" She stopped chopping onions and looked at me with genuine surprise. "What do you mean? We love you both the same. I know you love us. But loving and investing are different things. You paid for Brooke's equipment, her studio renovation, her college tuition before she dropped out. I worked my way through school alone, and I am still paying those loans." My mother set down the knife. "Meredith, you were always the capable one. You never needed our help. Brooke is more fragile. She needs more support. I needed support too, Mom. I just stopped asking because the answer was always no." She waved her hand dismissively. "You are being dramatic. Everything worked out fine for you. You have a good job, a nice apartment. What more do you want?" I wanted to say, "I want you to see me. I want you to be proud of me without qualifying it. I want you to frame one of my achievements on that wall where Brooke's stick figure family has hung since 1999. Instead, I said, "Never mind. The onions are burning." That conversation should have been my warning, but I am stubborn in the way that only unloved eldest daughters can be. I convinced myself that grand gestures might accomplish what words could not. If I could show my parents something tangible, something undeniable, maybe they would finally understand my value. So I spent the next year saving aggressively. I cut my grocery budget, canceled subscriptions, skipped vacations, and picked up freelance projects on weekends. By November, I had saved $6,200. I wrote a check to my parents for that exact amount, enough to cover 3 months of their mortgage payments. This was not pocket change for me. This was a year of discipline and sacrifice condensed into a single piece of paper. I drove to Columbus for Thanksgiving, carrying that check in an envelope inside my purse, along with carefully chosen gifts for everyone. A leather-bound journal for my father, who always talked about writing his memoirs, a hand-painted ceramic vase for my mother, who loved gardening, a vintage camera strap for Brooke since she was always complaining about neck pain from her equipment. Thoughtful, intentional, invisible as it turned out, the house smelled like roasting turkey when I arrived. My mother hugged me at the door, then immediately said, "Go check on the green bean casserole. I have been running around all morning. No hello, no how was the drive, just an assignment." I put on an apron and got to work. Brooke arrived 2 hours later with her boyfriend, Tyler, a personal trainer with a firm handshake and not much to say. My father greeted them at the door like visiting royalty. There they are. Tyler, come help me with the TV. I cannot get the game on the right channel. The men disappeared. Brooke poured herself wine without offering me any and began telling our mother about a brand deal she had landed. $500 to promote a teeth whitening kit. My mother reacted as though Brooke had been named ambassador to France. Dinner was the usual performance. I had spent 3 hours preparing sides, setting the table with the good china, and arranging the centerpiece I had brought from a local florist. When we sat down, my father blessed the food, thanked God for the family, mentioned Brooke's brand deal, and said nothing about the meal I had largely prepared. After dessert, I decided it was time. I pulled the envelope from my purse. Mom, Dad, I have something for you. I handed the envelope to my mother. She opened it, glanced at the check, and smiled. Oh, Meredith, that is sweet. Thank you, honey. She set it on the counter. On the counter, next to the cranberry sauce and a stack of used napkins. Then she turned to my father with a brightness in her eyes that I had never once seen directed at me. Glenn, should we tell them now? My father grinned. Go ahead. My mother reached under her chair where she apparently hid a small velvet box. She handed it to Brooke. We have been keeping a secret. Your father and I bought the Howell townhouse on Maple Street. 2 bedrooms, renovated kitchen, small backyard. It is yours, baby, Brooke screamed. Tyler whooped. My parents beamed. I sat perfectly still, watching my check collect condensation from the cranberry sauce dish. The townhouse, I would later learn, cost $185,000. My parents had taken out a second mortgage and dipped into retirement savings to buy it. For Brooke, the same parents who told me $200 for a summer program was too expensive. I lasted exactly 47 minutes after that announcement. I helped clear the table, I washed the dishes, I wrapped up leftovers and labeled them with masking tape, and then I picked up my envelope from the counter, still unopened past that initial glance, put it back in my purse, collected my coat, and walked toward the front door. Meredith? Where are you going? My mother's voice caught me at the threshold. I turned around. Brooke was showing Tyler photos of the townhouse on her phone. My father was pouring himself bourbon. Nobody else had noticed me leaving. Home, I said. You just got here this morning. Stay the night at least. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I did not see a mother I needed to impress. I saw a woman who had made her choices clearly, repeatedly, and without apology for 31 years. You bought Brooke a house, I said quietly. You set my check on the counter next to the garbage. It is not garbage, it is cranberry sauce. And I said thank you. You are right, Mom. You did say thank you. And now I am saying goodbye. I walked out. Behind me, I heard my father call. Let her go, Pam. She will cool off by morning. I did not cool off. I drove south on Interstate 71 until Columbus was aglow in my rearview mirror. My phone buzzed repeatedly. I did not look at it. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and a coffee that tasted like burned regret, and arrived in Nashville, Tennessee at 6 in the morning with no plan, no contacts, and a tank running on fumes. I chose Nashville because the highway chose it for me. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones you make by not deciding at all. I checked into a motel near Music Row, slept until noon, and then sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. 23 missed calls. 14 text messages. I read exactly one, from Brooke. Mom is upset. Way to ruin Thanksgiving. Again, as though I had a history of ruining things, as though the person who cooked, cleaned, and showed up every single time was the problem. I turned my phone off and went for a walk. Nashville in late November was cold but alive. I wandered through downtown, past honky-tonks bleeding country music onto the sidewalks, past tourists in cowboy boots, past a mural of a giant guitar on a brick wall. I stopped at a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, ordered a latte, and sat by the window watching people who had no idea I existed. It was the most peaceful I had felt in years. The barista, a woman about my age with short red hair and a tattoo of a compass on her wrist, noticed me sitting there for 2 hours. You look like you are either running from something or towards something. I have not figured out which one yet, I admitted. She smiled. I moved here from Topeka 3 years ago with $400 and a cat named Biscuit. Best decision I ever made. I am Nora, by the way. Nora became my first friend in Nashville. Over the following week, she connected me with her landlord who had a vacant studio apartment, introduced me to her circle of transplants and artists, and told me about a design firm downtown that was hiring. I applied on a Monday and had an interview by Wednesday. The creative director, a sharp woman named Joan Hathaway, reviewed my portfolio with genuine interest. This restaurant renovation is remarkable. The way you balance the industrial elements with warmth. Where did you study? When I told her about my Cincinnati background, my award, my experience, she nodded approvingly. We need someone who understands practical beauty. Can you start in 2 weeks? I started in 2 weeks. My Nashville apartment was smaller than my Cincinnati place. A converted attic with sloped ceilings that forced me to duck near the walls, but the light was extraordinary. Morning sun poured through a skylight and painted golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. I bought a secondhand desk, set it directly beneath that skylight, and began designing my life from scratch. During this time, my family's communications followed a predictable pattern. First came the guilt. Your mother has not stopped crying. Then the anger. This is incredibly selfish, Meredith. Then the bargaining. If you come home for Christmas, we can talk about everything. Then the delegation. Aunt Carol called. Cousin Marcus texted. Even my old high school friend Jenna reached out, clearly prompted by my mother. Not one message acknowledged the townhouse disparity. Not one person said, I understand why you are hurt. Every message centered on how my absence was affecting them. I found a therapist in January. His name was Dr. Sato, a calm, deliberate man who listened more than he spoke. During our third session, he asked me to describe the moment I decided to leave. It was not the townhouse, I said slowly. It was the counter. She put my check on the counter like it was junk mail. I spent a year saving that money. It represented everything I had. And she could not be bothered to put it somewhere safe, let alone somewhere meaningful. What did the check represent to you beyond the money? Proof. Proof that I was worth something, that I could contribute to this family in a way they would finally notice. And when she did not notice, I realized she never would. No amount of money, no award, no sacrifice would ever make them see me the way they see Brooke. And I was done auditioning for a role I was never going to get. Dr. Sato helped me understand something crucial. My parents were not villains. They were limited. They had assigned roles to their children early, Meredith the capable one, Brooke the fragile one, and then spent 3 decades reinforcing those roles until they became unquestionable truths. Questioning those roles would require them to admit they had been unfair, and most people would rather lose a daughter than lose their self-image. February brought unexpected professional momentum. Joan assigned me to lead the redesign of a boutique hotel in East Nashville, a project with a tight budget and an ambitious timeline. I threw myself into it with the energy of someone who had nothing to lose. The result was a space that felt like a love letter to the neighborhood: warm brick, local art, handmade textiles, and a rooftop bar with a view of the skyline. The hotel owner cried when she saw the finished product. This is exactly what I imagined but could not articulate, she said. That sentence meant more to me than every "that is nice, honey" I had ever received combined. In March, the family dynamic shifted without my involvement. My mother emailed, and for the first time the tone was different. Less accusatory, more confused. I do not understand what happened, Meredith. Your father and I gave you a good life. We fed you, clothed you, supported your education. I did not respond for a week. When I did, I kept it factual. You did not support my education. I funded it entirely through loans and work. I still owe $22,000. You bought Brooke a house. The silence from their end lasted 3 weeks. Apparently, fact-checking family mythology takes time. April brought the collapse I had not anticipated. Brooke called me directly for the first time since Thanksgiving. She was crying. Dad got laid off. The company restructured his whole division. They are behind on the second mortgage, the one they took out for my townhouse. Mom asked me to sell it, but I just moved in. This is not fair. I sat on my attic floor, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something complicated. Not satisfaction. Not pity exactly, something closer to exhaustion. The weight of being right about a thing you desperately wanted to be wrong about. I am sorry about Dad, I said. And I meant it. What am I supposed to do? Brooke asked, and in her voice I heard the helplessness of someone who had never been asked to solve her own problems. I do not know, Brooke, but I think you are going to have to figure it out. Just like I did. She hung up on me. I added $1 to the envelope I kept in my desk drawer. I had started this ritual in December. $1 for every week I maintained my boundaries. Not in a piggy bank. In a plain white envelope. Unsealed. Because boundaries are not locks. They are choices you make again every single day. The confrontation came in May, at a neutral location I chose deliberately. My parents drove to Nashville. We met at a restaurant near Centennial Park, neutral territory with enough public presence to keep things civil. My father looked 10 years older. My mother's hands trembled around her coffee cup. Thank you for agreeing to see us, my mother began. We have had a lot of time to think. Have you? I asked. Not sarcastically. Genuinely. Your email, my father said, clearing his throat. About the loans. I looked it up. Tuition when you were in school. What we spent on Brooke before she dropped out. The equipment. The studio. The townhouse. He paused. I added it all up. And? We spent over $260,000 on your sister. We spent nothing on you. The number hung in the air between us like smoke. My mother pressed a napkin to her eyes. We truly did not see it, Meredith. You were so competent. So reliable. It never occurred to us that you needed anything because you never fell apart. I fell apart constantly, I said. I just did it alone. In my apartment. After driving home from family dinners where nobody asked me a single question about my life. We are sorry, my father said. 2 words. Simple, insufficient, but real. I could hear it. For the first time, the apology was not followed by a justification. Not, but we were doing our best. Not, but Brooke needed more. Just. We are sorry. I appreciate that, I said. But sorry does not restructure 31 years overnight. What do you need from us? My mother asked. I need you to stop treating my independence as evidence that I do not need love. I need you to ask me about my work, my life, my goals, without immediately redirecting to Brooke. I need you to understand that I left because staying was killing the part of me that still believed I deserved better. They nodded. Whether they fully understood, I could not tell. Understanding is not a single conversation. It is a practice. We parted with careful hugs. Not warm, not cold, honest. My mother stopped at the door and turned back. The check you gave us at Thanksgiving. I still have it. I put it in my jewelry box after you left. I should have done that immediately. Yes, I said. You should have. Summer in Nashville was hot, loud, and full of possibility. My hotel project won a regional design award, covered by a local magazine. Joan promoted me to lead designer with a raise that finally let me breathe without counting every dollar. Nora and I became inseparable, joined by her boyfriend Marcus, a jazz musician, and my colleague Priya, who had relocated from San Francisco. We started a tradition of Sunday brunches at a different restaurant each week, arguing about design and music and politics over biscuits and gravy. I started dating someone in August. His name was Leo, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a terrible sense of direction. He got lost driving to our first date and showed up 20 minutes late with a hand-drawn map of his wrong turns that made me laugh so hard I forgot to be annoyed. He was the first person I had been with who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. The relationship with my family evolved slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks. My father found a new job, lower pay, less prestige, but steady. They sold Brooke's townhouse to pay down the second mortgage. Brooke, forced into self-sufficiency for the first time, got a job as an administrative assistant at a real estate office. She was not thriving, but she was surviving, and surviving without a safety net builds a kind of muscle that cannot be developed any other way. By the following Thanksgiving, exactly 1 year after I left, I hosted dinner in my Nashville apartment. The guest list was small: Nora and Marcus, Priya and her partner, Leo, my downstairs neighbor, an 80-year-old retired nurse named Dolores who made the best sweet potato pie in Davidson County. These were people who had chosen me, and whom I had chosen back. No auditions required, no roles to perform, just presence. My mother called that morning. "Happy Thanksgiving, Meredith." "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." "What are you making?" "Too much food, probably." She laughed. A real laugh. "Your father and I were wondering if we could visit next month. See your apartment, meet your friends." "I would like that," I said. And I meant it. Not because I had forgiven everything. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is a dimmer, and I was adjusting it slowly, on my own terms. But because I had finally stopped needing their visit to validate my life was already valid. Their presence would be welcome, but not required. That evening, after the dishes were washed and the guests had gone and Dolores had left with a container of leftovers that could feed her for a week, I sat alone by my window. Nashville glowed amber below. The skylight above showed a handful of stars fighting through the city light. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the white envelope. $52 inside. One for every week I had chosen myself. I added the 53rd. The envelope was not a trophy. It was not a monument to pain. It was a quiet record of every small moment I had decided that my own worth was not negotiable, that leaving was not running, that silence was not weakness, that building a life where you are seen clearly is worth more than any house someone else can buy. I sealed the envelope for the first time. Not because the practice was over, but because some chapters close gently, without announcement, and the next one begins before you even notice. Outside, Nashville hummed its usual song. Inside, I sat in a home I had built from nothing and everything, and I did not feel invisible at all. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear about the moment you chose yourself. The moment you stopped auditioning for people who were never going to clap. Share it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear that their worth is not up for debate, send them this video. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.